In the stark silence of a cold interrogation room, a billionaire CEO sits handcuffed, his eyes fixed on a small child standing quietly just beyond the glass partition. The child's wide eyes hold a mixture of confusion and sorrow. Meanwhile, high above in a glass tower overlooking the city, the same man breaks down alone, tears streaking his face as the glaring spotlight from a giant Time magazine cover bearing his image reflects off the windows. A somber voice cuts through the tension. He built an empire, but he couldn't save her. No names are spoken, no context offered, only raw emotion and an aching mystery. The world watches in disbelief, drawn to a story of power, loss, and an unforgiving fate. No names yet, but the weight of their past lingers in every silent exchange. The billionaire's empire gleams in the distant city skyline, a monument to power and success, now overshadowed by the fractured relationship between two souls. The child's gaze remains steady, searching for answers where none are given, while the CEO's heart shatters quietly behind cold walls of glass and steel. The world outside spins on, oblivious to the pain hidden beneath headlines and high-rises. He built more than a company, the voice continues, but couldn't protect the one who mattered most. The coldness of the scene contrasts sharply with the warmth that once was. The story is not of triumphs but of fractures, of promises broken in silent moments long ago. The child was once full of hope, watching a parent strive, falter, and finally disappear into the labyrinth of ambition. Behind every headline lies a wound hidden beneath polished smiles and glass offices, a wound that no amount of success can heal. He tried to be everything, the voice whispers, but lost sight of what mattered when the cameras weren't watching. The tension between public image and private pain begins to unravel, pulling us deeper into the fractured heart of the story. In the vast echo of empty boardrooms and late-night meetings, the CEO's reflection flickers like a ghost on polished floors. The power to command respect, to shape industries, was always shadowed by the fear of losing what no wealth could replace. Alone, the man wrestles with a burden few see, the unbearable cost of ambition. He stands at the summit, the voice intones, but the view is empty without her. The narrative thread tightens, pulling the audience into the emotional paradox of greatness built on fragile foundations. The paradox remains: a man who could build empires, but not mend the fragile heart of a child who needed him most. Behind every headline lies the silent story of heartbreak and regret. The CEO's sobs echo in the empty tower, a rare crack in the facade of power. The child watches still, a silent witness to a man who could shape the world, yet failed the one thing he vowed to protect. He built an empire, the voice repeats softly, but he couldn't save her. The screen fades to black, leaving the question hanging: what broke them, and can they be made whole again? The story now turns to the child, no longer just a symbol, but a person forged in the crucible of neglect and silent promises. She watched her father crumble beneath the weight of ambition, swearing quietly to herself she would never follow that same path. Her small hands clenched into fists as she vowed, "I will be stronger, I will not break." Her eyes, sharp and guarded, held the shadows of abandoned dreams and the fire of resilience. The child's world was a patchwork of fractured moments: love withheld, whispered apologies, and the distant echo of a man who built everything except the bridge back to her. She grew into a young woman, shaped not by the world's admiration, but by the scars of her past. In a bustling boardroom filled with suits and steel, she stood turned away, excluded by unspoken rules, the echo of rejection still fresh. The wound of being overlooked, dismissed, was deeper than any loss of power. Each glance she stole, every whispered word behind closed doors, reminded her that her place was never meant to be among the privileged. Yet, beneath the armor of defiance, a fragile hope flickered, to prove her worth not just to the world, but to herself. In the quiet corners of a crowded cafe, a young boy waited alone, his mother pleading with a manager for a job that never came. His small frame hunched against the harsh cold, his eyes searching for comfort in a world that seemed indifferent. He carried more than just hunger. He bore the weight of uncertainty, and a desperate hope that his mother's struggle would one day pay off. The boy's silent witness to hardship was a testament to the price paid by those left behind in the pursuit of success. It was here, in these unnoticed moments, that the true cost of ambition was etched. Her wound became the anchor that drove her forward. Each rejection fueled a fire beneath her, burning brighter with every setback. The shame she once carried like a heavy cloak transformed into a fierce armor. She learned to wield it not as a weakness, but as a weapon, a reminder of what she had endured and what she refused to become. The girl who watched a father fail became the woman who refused to break, even when the world threatened to crumble around her. She stood on the edge of power, scarred but unyielding, ready to claim a future only she could envision. Love, fear, shame, they intertwined like threads in a tapestry too complex to unravel. The child's heart was a battleground where hope and pain warred silently. Each heartbeat echoed the lessons of a fractured past, carrying scars invisible to the world but searingly real. The young woman who emerged was a paradox, tough yet tender, broken yet healing. She would carry her story into the boardrooms, the hallways, the silent nights, never forgetting the child who once swore she would never be like him. Her power was born not from privilege, but from the fire of survival. The journey began not with fanfare, but with a single spark, a risky idea born from years of silent struggle. Sleepless nights became routine as she poured herself into her vision, fingers tapping relentlessly on a laptop keyboard, surrounded by discarded notes and half-empty coffee cups. Friends drifted away. Birthdays passed unnoticed, but her determination never wavered. Every setback was met with grit, every small win a fragile triumph. She was building more than a business, she was forging a new identity, one piece at a time, even as the cost grew heavier with each passing day. There were sacrifices she never anticipated. The silence from old friends grew louder, their absence a reminder of the price paid for ambition. Lost birthdays, missed dinners, fleeting texts replaced real conversations. Love, once promised, faded into distant memories. Yet, even as isolation crept in, she clung to the hope that the cost was worth the prize. The struggle to build something lasting was not just about success, it was a battle to reclaim control over a life once shattered by neglect and abandonment. The wins came, each one a bittersweet milestone. A successful pitch here, a contract signed there, recognition whispered behind closed doors. But the applause was hollow. She felt the creeping weight of exhaustion settle deeper in her bones, the strain etched into the lines around her eyes. The facade of triumph masked a growing emptiness, a question gnawing quietly beneath the surface. At what cost did this rise come? The harder she climbed, the steeper the price she paid in lost moments and frayed connections. Her nights grew longer, the boundary between work and life dissolving into a haze of exhaustion. Late-night emails, early morning calls, each demanded more than she had to give. Relationships frayed, and the few who remained close whispered concerns behind closed doors. Yet she pressed on, driven by a fire born from years of pain and determination. The dream of success was no longer enough. She needed to prove to herself that she was more than broken, that she could rise from the ruins and own her destiny. With every step forward, the price climbed higher. The sacrifices weighed heavily on her heart, the lost laughter, the missed embraces, the moments that would never return. Success tasted bitter when it came at the expense of the very parts of herself she fought to protect. Yet, beneath the fatigue and regret, a spark remained, a stubborn hope that this climb was not in vain, that from the ruins of brokenness she would build something not just powerful, but lasting. Her story was one of growth and cost, intertwined, inseparable. Just as the empire seemed unshakable, the ground beneath her feet cracked wide open. The truth surfaced in whispers that quickly became roars. Her co-founder was not just a business partner, but her own sibling, a secret buried beneath years of silence and pain. Betrayal wasn't just corporate, it was personal. The revelation shattered the fragile trust she had painstakingly built, casting doubt on every deal, every success. The business she thought was hers suddenly felt like a fragile house of cards, threatening to collapse with the weight of unspoken family wounds. Worse still, the mentor she had trusted implicitly had been siphoning resources, quietly stealing from the company's coffers. The betrayal cut deep, not just financially but emotionally. Every word of encouragement, every late-night strategy session, now felt like manipulation. The betrayal widened the fracture in her heart, echoing the abandonment she had suffered as a child. The foundation of her world crumbled, and she faced the terrifying possibility that everything she had fought for was a lie built on deceit. Amidst the chaos, a personal health crisis struck, an illness she kept secret from everyone but herself. The relentless pace and weight of betrayal pushed her body to the edge. She fought silent battles in sterile hospital rooms, veins hooked to machines, alone except for fleeting moments of vulnerability. Unable to share her pain with the team she led, or the child she was trying to protect, she masked her fading strength behind forced smiles. The collapse was not just professional, it was deeply personal and terrifyingly real. The walls closed in as the company's fate teetered on the edge of disaster. Boardroom meetings became battlegrounds, alliances fractured, and trust evaporated. The woman who had risen from brokenness now faced the ultimate test. Could she hold her empire together, or would it all crumble under the weight of truth and betrayal? Each decision carried the weight of legacy and loss. The pressure was immense, the future uncertain. The collapse felt inevitable, a slow-motion disaster unfolding before eyes that refused to blink. In the quiet aftermath of chaos, the woman stood at a crossroads, her empire fractured but not yet fallen. The cost had been immeasurable. Trust lost, health compromised, family secrets revealed. Yet beneath the ruin lay the seeds of a new beginning. The story she thought she knew was no longer hers alone. It was tangled in the lives of those she loved and those who betrayed her. The collapse forced a reckoning, not just of business, but of heart. What she would choose now could either destroy or redefine everything. The boardroom was thick with anticipation and unspoken tension. The room, bathed in the harsh daylight filtering through floor-to-ceiling windows, felt like an arena where history would be made or destroyed. The CEO stood at the head of the table, her figure tall and commanding, but her eyes betrayed the weight she carried, the burden of a lifetime of sacrifices, betrayals, and heartbreak. "This is the moment everything changes," she said firmly, voice steady yet charged with raw emotion. The board members exchanged guarded glances, the silent vote looming like a judge's verdict on not just a company, but a family legacy. Her gaze swept the room, some faces loyal, others skeptical, knowing that every decision here could shatter what was left or build something new from the ruins. The clash between power and vulnerability was palpable, as personal history collided with corporate destiny. Away from the harsh glare of the boardroom, in the quiet sanctuary of a softly lit room, the CEO and the young woman, her daughter, shared a moment long overdue. The air was thick with unspoken words and years of silence. The CEO reached out trembling, eyes glistening as she whispered, "I'm sorry for all I couldn't say, for all the times I failed you." The daughter's breath hitched, her eyes flickering with pain and the fragile hope of forgiveness. This was not a grand gesture for the world to see, but a deeply personal reckoning that peeled away layers of pride and hurt. Tears welled and fell silently as years of distance and misunderstanding began to dissolve. It was a fragile bridge, fragile but real, built on remorse and the desire to heal what once seemed irreparable. In that quiet moment, power was not in the empire, but in the human heart's capacity to forgive. Back in the boardroom, the moment of truth arrived. The CEO watched as the voting cards were silently placed, one by one on the table. Each card was more than a yes or no. It was a symbol of trust, betrayal, hope, or fear. The room held its breath. When the final tally was announced, a collective exhale filled the air. Some faces relaxed, others tightened. The decision was irrevocable. The legacy would survive, but not without scars. Her heart pounded with relief and sorrow. She had fought not just for a company, but for the fragile family behind the headlines. This vote was her declaration, no longer a broken child hiding behind power, but a woman who owned her pain, her triumphs, and her future. Though the battle was won, she knew the war for healing was only beginning. In the quiet aftermath, away from the eyes of the world, a silent embrace spoke volumes. The CEO and her daughter found themselves alone in a dimly lit hallway, the noise of the corporate battlefield fading into the background. No words were exchanged, none were needed. Their embrace was a fragile but profound gesture of forgiveness, understanding, and the yearning to reconnect. The years of pain, distance, and misunderstanding melted away in the warmth of that moment. It was a balm for wounds no money or power could heal. Outside, the empire's fate still hung in the balance, but here, in this small corner, healing had begun. The personal reclaimed its place at the heart of the story, reminding all that beneath the veneer of success lies a human story of love, loss, and redemption. The climax was not just a moment of decision, but a transformation of self. Alone in the stillness of her glass office tower, the CEO stood gazing out over the city lights that shimmered like distant stars. The battles fought, betrayal, illness, fractured family ties, had left scars but also revealed a newfound strength. She realized true power was not in control or conquest, but in the courage to face brokenness and choose healing. The empire she had built was no longer just about legacy or wealth. It was about reclaiming her story on her own terms. The peak of her climb was behind her. The path ahead was uncertain, but wholly hers to define. A quiet resolve settled over her, a promise to herself to be whole, not perfect. The boardroom battles had finally quieted, but the echoes of those conflicts lingered in every corner of her life. Titles once worn like armor were now stripped away, leaving her exposed yet somehow freer. She no longer measured herself by the empire's skyline or the flashing cameras outside glass towers, but by the small, quiet moments that filled her days. Morning walks through city streets, once scorned as ordinary, now felt like a balm, witnessing the ordinary lives she had long forgotten in her pursuit of power. The laughter of children playing in parks, the resilience etched in the faces of strangers, reminded her that life's true worth was found in connection, not control. The empire's walls no longer defined her existence. Instead, her spirit flourished in the space carved out by loss and acceptance. She was becoming a leader not of conquest, but of compassion, embracing the power of vulnerability and the strength of healing. Her daughter, once a distant figure shadowed by years of silence and fractured trust, gradually began to re-enter her life, not as an adversary, but as an ally in rebuilding what was broken. Together, they navigated tentative steps, shared coffee in a quiet cafe where the hum of conversation softened the weight of their history. Gentle laughter over memories both painful and precious, tears shed for wounds still tender. The legacy that had threatened to tear them apart became the fragile thread weaving them closer. Love, long buried under anger and hurt, found room to grow in the silent spaces between apologies and honest conversation. It was not an easy path. Old scars resurfaced, but so did hope. The power they discovered was not inherited, earned, or bought. It was forged through forgiveness and the willingness to face pain side by side. Her illness, once a well-guarded secret behind closed doors, became a silent teacher of humility and resilience. She no longer hid her vulnerability beneath a mask of invincibility, but embraced it as part of her story. Days once ruled by endless meetings and tireless demands gave way to moments of rest, reflection, and genuine connection. She learned to ask for help, to lean on friends who returned, not as casual colleagues but as true companions in her journey of healing. The scars she bore, some visible, many invisible, were no longer symbols of weakness but badges of survival. Each scar told a story of a battle fought and won, a testament to the price of greatness and the enduring power of resilience. In allowing herself to be broken, she found a new kind of wholeness, a completeness shaped by acceptance and love. Legacy had transformed in her mind, from a fortress built on wealth and power to a garden nurtured by sacrifice and love. She watched the company she once led from the top with a mix of pride and relief, as new leadership took the reins, steering the ship with renewed purpose and integrity. She understood now that true legacy was not a monument to personal glory, but a ripple effect that touched lives far beyond her own. The story she left behind was not just one of business success or failure, but of courage, the courage to let go, to forgive, and to rebuild. Her journey had taught her that brokenness need not be an end, but the fertile soil from which beauty and strength could grow anew. In the quiet solitude of twilight, the CEO found a moment to reflect on the path that had shaped her. The brokenness that once threatened to consume her was now the wellspring of her strength. No longer defined by headlines, titles, or external validation, she embraced the imperfect beauty of her journey. The child she once was, the scared, determined girl, still lived inside her, tempered now by years of love, loss, and healing. Her legacy was not one of perfection, but of authenticity, resilience, and the unyielding human spirit. Breathing deeply, she felt the weight of the past lift slightly, replaced by the gentle promise of a future she was ready to meet, whole, courageous, and unafraid. Years later, the company's once brilliant empire stood resilient, transformed by trials and tempered by truth. The CEO had stepped down from power, but she never truly left, her spirit woven into the foundation she helped build and the lives she touched. In a quiet office filled with sunlight and memories, she gazed at a framed photograph of a young child's hand, resting gently on a boardroom chair, the symbol of legacy passed quietly to the next generation. The future was uncertain, yet full of promise. A single line echoed softly in the stillness. He left the company, but never left her. The story lingered, an enduring testament to love, loss, and the courage to heal. The city skyline glittered beneath a night sky alive with fireworks, colors bursting and fading in rhythmic waves. Inside a quiet room, the CEO stood before a mirror, her eyes steady and clear as she faced her reflection. In that moment of stillness and celebration, the journey of pain and healing converged, her fractured past and hopeful future intertwined in a silent vow. No words were spoken, but the depth of her gaze said everything. Strength born from brokenness, resilience tempered by love. The fireworks outside echoed the heartbeat of a woman who had weathered every storm and emerged whole. In a sunlit boardroom, a small child sat quietly on a chair, eyes wide with wonder as they reached up toward the polished table, ready to inherit a legacy not of power or empire, but of hope and renewal. The child's hand trembled slightly, mirroring the same determination that had once driven the CEO through brokenness and triumph. The past whispered softly in the room's stillness, reminding all that every legacy begins with a single fragile moment of courage. Here, a new story was beginning, one written not in headlines or dollars, but in love and the promise of healing. The city pulsed with life below, streets alive with the hum of dreams and the quiet footsteps of those who dared to rise again. The CEO walked along a rooftop garden, the breeze catching strands of her hair as she paused to look out over the endless horizon. Fireworks still flickered in the distance, a reminder that every ending was a beginning in disguise. She breathed deeply, the weight of the past lifted by the strength of the present. Her journey was a testament to the human spirit's capacity to break, mend, and soar. In that moment, the future was hers, unwritten, limitless, and shimmering with possibility. As the final fireworks faded into the night sky, the scene closed on a single silent image, a child's hand resting firmly on the same boardroom chair that had once symbolized power, now transformed into a seat of hope. The legacy was no longer one of brokenness or loss, but of resilience, healing, and love passed from one generation to the next. The story ended not with a roar, but with a whisper that echoed through the hearts of all who watched, a promise that even from the deepest fractures, life could be rebuilt, stronger and more beautiful than before.